Hi Bengals, my name is Jacqueline Falcon. I'm one of the amazing art teachers that we have at Briscoe Middle School. I'm so glad that you're able to join us for this fun skill building lesson today. Even if you're not one of our Bengal artists, we look forward to seeing you back on campus and participate in some of our art activities that we have planned for our campus this year. Let's get started with our skill building lesson in shading.
Okay, to get started, the materials you're going to need is some paper. You can use any kind of paper. You can use a notebook paper, a sketchbook paper. You can use typing paper. Any paper will do, because it's not really important the kind of paper or materials you have. What's important is that you practice the skill. So today I'm going to be using my sketchbook. You're also going to need a pencil. It can be any kind of pencil, just a regular number 2 pencil. If you have nicer drawing pencils, like a ebony pencil, or even to some fancier drawing pencils, you are welcome to use those. Something else that might help you that we'll go over a little bit is using a tortillon or a blending stick. If you don't have one of those, you can also use a Q-tip or just another piece of paper. To get started, we're going to go over the basics. So when you do your shading, you want to try to keep your pencil a little bit off of the paper, just so that you get used to holding it. I like to hold my pencil kind of further back away from the edge instead of that nice tight grip that we're so used to and trained with. So I like to hold my pencil back here just because it gives me a lot looser movement and I'm able to control the pressure on the paper. Because when you're shading, it's all about the pressure. So I'm going to start by just drawing a few boxes. We can start with 3, so that will give us like a dark, a medium, and a light. And so I'm going to put a D, an M, and an L. So when you're shading, you want to try to, like I said, you want to do some nice, controlled, but light pressure. And so you're going to want to just get kind of a lighter pressure and fill in that box. Notice how I've got controlled movements. I'm trying to stay inside the box, but I'm not pressing very hard. And so my pencil is just lightly gliding over the top of the paper without much pressure. Then I'm going to fill in the medium pressure box, but this time I'm going to put a little bit more pressure. If you notice, I kind of changed my grip, moved a little closer to the edge, and you notice how the value, which is kind of the lightness or darkness of that graphite that is on the paper, it appears a little bit darker. But again, I'm still making very controlled movements. When you're doing shading, you want to have controlled movements so that you're not going off and out of the areas, because sometimes when you try to clean those areas up, you can still see the memory of that line. Now for the dark, and you notice how again I kind of move my grip up so that I'm able to apply more pressure and I'm able to get an even darker value. So some tips that help when you're shading, you're going to want to try to always go in the same direction, because if you tend to change directions when you're shading, it gives you some darker values, because then you begin to layer the graphite. So as you notice, that tends to kind of start to build up. And so when you're going in the same direction, you can always see the area that you were at before to really kind of help you know where you were shading. So what I'd like for you to do is I want for you to go ahead and draw a circle. So we're going to go ahead and shade a sphere. So whenever you're shading a sphere, you want to kind of realize that you have a light source. So for example, we're going to pretend our sun is coming from this angle towards our sphere, and so there might be like a small area here that the light is really hitting hard. We like to call that our highlight. And so that tends to stay almost the same color as the paper, and then it'll move into some gradual shading into our shadow, which tends to be on the opposite side. So a shadow, and that tends to be on the opposite side. Oftentimes you see objects when they're in the sun, they have like a shadow that might kind of come off of that, and that is called a cast shadow. Okay, so to think about that, so you want to kind of think too, like, you know how this, when the sun shines on the moon, sometimes you don't see the whole sphere. And so you want to kind of picture that line, like where the light might change from light to dark. And so we're going to create like a lighter shade from that line moving forward towards our highlight. And then what I would like for you to do is to challenge yourself and see how light you can shade up to that circle to make it almost disappear into the paper. And so as you're shading, you may want to like lift your pencil almost off the paper as you get there and just let it barely glide on there. And so I'm going to do a little bit of erasing of my circle so that that line doesn't appear as harsh. And just do your best. The more practice you get, the better you'll get when you get to school. I can't wait for you to share your skills with me. I'd love to see all of your talents. So do some light shading there up into that highlight. Okay, so next I'm going to go ahead and do like a medium value on this back side of the ball. I'm just going to kind of give it a medium, not too hard. So again, notice I kind of moved my hand up a little closer on the pencil to be able to get some nice controlled value. And I wanted to just gently blend into where my lighter shadow was, or my lighter shade. And if yours doesn't match up perfectly, that's okay, because I'm going to show you some tips and tricks of using those blending sticks to really kind of help you achieve that look. Okay, and then once I've done that, I'm going to do a dark shadow in my cast shadow area, because those shadows usually tend to be the darkest shadow that you see when you're looking at an image that has a nice light source. And you want to have a nice even pressure. Okay, so now that you have just a basic shading there, it looks good, but we can always push it a little further to make it even better. And so I'm going to go in and use my blending tool. I'm going to go ahead and use a Q-tip so you can kind of see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently kind of touch up some of those areas, and you notice where I touch that, some of the graphite picks up onto my tool there, and it also helps to kind of blend and move some of that graphite around so that it gives it a more even look. And so if you were not able to kind of get that nice soft line between a light to a medium, that's okay, because this tool will help you achieve that look. And so it really helps to kind of soften the edges. So I'm using that cleaner side to kind of help blend out from that lighter area there. And then I'm going to bring it back. Also too, a nice thing is that you can use your blending tool to also help you remove some of the areas. And so when you look at some different spheres, oftentimes like on the surface, you may get like a reflective light that kind of hits. And so I like to just kind of tap with my eraser and notice how it picks up some of that graphite, and then I can soften it with my blending tool. That will help give it kind of that more realistic look. And then go back in to really kind of finish out my, or even out my shadows. And so I really hope that you are able to practice and share with me when we come back to school and show me some of those things. Or you can even too post them in the comments. I'd love to see them. Thank you for joining me, Bengals. Can't wait to see you back at school.